Hey guys, it's Face My Revolution and welcome to a new episode of I'm a Metalhead and I like to mix pop because it's easier to handle. No, just kidding. This episode is about my mixing workflow. So what is a mixing workflow? It's the most important thing of an audio engineer, in my opinion. It's basically your game plan. How do you approach a mix? How to approach, in this case, a metal mix? What kind of actions do I do first before I do something else? With what tracks do I start mixing? How do I organize my tracks? All such things should be clear because if you don't have such a mixing workflow ready for you, you run into consistency problems. And that is something that occurred to myself in the past. Let me describe that problem real quick. I wrote a new song and I had a decent starting basis going on. Nice guitar tone, nice bass tone, nice drum tone, cool vocal mix already, well recorded. And now I started mixing and merging all the things together, applying some plugins on the master channel and so on and so on. And the end result was pretty darn good. Cool. Now I had another new song, so it happens. And well, the starting point was basically the same. Good vocal recording, good guitar tone, good bass tone, good drum mix. And now I applied my usual stuff on it and the song sounded like shit in the end, and I really didn't know why, because in my opinion I did nothing wrong technically, but that really made me think about, okay dude, you have a consistency problem here. You cannot guarantee that your mixes will always be good, and that is what's really a huge problem. If somebody calls you and is like, hey, can you mix that record for me? And you're like, yeah, sure, but I don't know if it's gonna be good. That kind of sucks, right? So I put a lot of thought and a lot of time into this, and I came up with my own mixing workflow. I want to make shout outs to Andrew Shaps, Nolly from Periphery, A.L. Levy, Joey Sturgis, and Joel Wanasek for this, because those are the guys, basically the whole Nail the Mix team, from whom I basically learned everything and put my mixing workflow together like it is right now. And it improved my songs, my sound extremely. And I want to show you that right now. So what you don't see me do in this video is EQing a bass. It's not about the plugins. It's totally not about the plugins. It's all about what do I do when and how and why. That's the main question, okay? Sounds weird, but it's like this. So what do we start with? What do we do then? What do we then? And why does it make sense in this way? So I know what you all think right now.
Do it! Just do it!
All right, let's shrink myself a little bit here. That's about right. Good. So I have a project open here. It is Time of the Sickness, one of my latest songs. Gonna be available on my new album coming out in summer 2017 called Ego Trip. Advertisement. How do I start off with such a thing? My recording's done. I have all my vocals, MIDI tracks for synth tones ready. I have my guitar, lead guitar, bass, and I have recorded my drums, which is an E-drum kit. In my case, I'm playing digital drums, so I have a MIDI file ready. But I want to emphasize that is my human performance. I do not beat align that shit. If you need beat alignment, go grab a new drummer maybe. So I have a MIDI track instead of audio tracks for my drums. But this mixing workflow also works on real recorded drums. No worries. Good. I muted the vocal bus right here because that is the last thing that I want to care about. So let's start from the top. Master channel, logically the channel that everything is routed to. Then I got an instruments channel, and that's very important because I separate the vocals from the instruments. So this way I'm later able to kind of make the vocals stand more out or lay more on top of the mix. I don't want to compress the vocals as much as the instruments, for example, because I don't want to lose that much dynamics, that many dynamics on the vocals. So I totally separate the instruments from the vocals. Those two buses finally meet in the master channel. Okay, what do we have under the instruments bus? We have a synth bus, and below that, all my synths, which are basically only Silent 1 from Leonard Digital. And what I want to note here real quick is that my project structure with this kind of folders here represents generally how I route my tracks. So if you see a track below the synth bus, you can be pretty sure that this track is routed through the synth bus is routed through the instrument bus, and so on. So I visually represent what my routing is basically doing. Okay, so we got synth, we got a guitar bus. I have a mono lead in the middle center here. I have then I have rhythm, another bus that combines the DI. The DI combines the left and right channel. It's a DI recording. And I route the DI. The DI is basically where my amps, it's a little bit, the naming is a little bit weird, I have to admit. So you got the left and right channel here, and you can see those channels are actually the channels where my amp simulation plugins and my cabinets are on. The DI is a stereo bus for the left and right guitar channel. I should name that differently, maybe. Then the DI has a send to the room, and the room and the DI are routed to the rhythm. So that is clear, hopefully. Bass bus, pretty easy. I have a DI like on the guitar bus with all my amps and EQs. Holy shit, there's a lot going on my bass tracks. And another room send, and these two tracks also meet on the bass bus. Then the most sophisticated bus is my drum bus. I have Superior Drummer here on the bottom on the MIDI channel, and I do not do mixing in Superior Drummer itself. Superior Drummer has included plugins and an included mixer. I don't do that. So I route everything out of Superior Drummer into my DAW, and I do all the drum mixing in Reaper right here. So kick in, kick out, snare top, bottom, tom 1 to 5, overheads, hats, ambient, close, and far are all channels that get supplied by Superior Drummer. I combine the close amp, far ambience to ambience channel. I combine overheads and hi-hats to a cymbals channel. I combine all the 5 toms to a toms channel, snare top, bottom in the snare channel, and kick in and kick out in a kick channel. This all gets routed to the drums bus, naturally, where I can apply EQing and such stuff on the whole drum kit. And I have some sends here, a plate reverb, a room reverb, and a parallel compression bus. This all, the drums and the 2 reverbs and the parallel compression bus, is again summed up under the drum bus. Good, I think that's it for the project layout. It's pretty structured. I like that. If I have a visual representation of my routing, it makes things easy. And now, how do I start mixing such a project? Well, let's open up the mixer. As you can see, I have all my plugins disabled, and usually what I do is, first thing is surely applying Superior Drummer to the drums, because without Superior Drummer I don't hear any drums. Good. Routing, second thing, kind of logically. Then I need to apply some amp simulation plugins, some distortion pedals, some cabinets to my guitars so that I hear them, because I don't want to work with the DI signals. That does not apply to the bass. In the early stage of the mixing phase, I treat the raw bass DI signal. Adding the amps, adding an amp or a distortion or a cabinet to the bass is something I do later, actually, when I mix my drums. Sounds weird, but it works for me. Maybe it makes sense after we're finished. It sounds a little bit weird right now, why I should start with a DI signal of the bass. So let's go through this. First thing that I do is, okay, I solo my drum bus. That is usually the first thing. And I make volume adjustments. So I want to have a balance between everything: snare top, bottom mics, toms, and cymbals, kicks. All should be kind of leveled in a pleasant way. So I'm gonna play that back real quick. Need a place in the song, okay. And I'm gonna raise the master fader here a little bit so you can hear it clearly what's going on, because it's very silent. And for you Superior Drummer digital sample whiners and haters, this is how digital Superior Drummer sounds in its raw state. Ugh. I hate this discussion, really. Okay, so this is my basic drum tone. Very raw, nothing special, nice recording. Toontrack did a nice job there in the studio creating those samples. They sound amazing. So I do volume adjustments, so I have this kind of nice drum mix already. Not applying any plugins whatsoever up till now. Then I listen to my bass. Let's check the DI sound. This is an Ibanez SR705 with Bartolini MK1 humbuckers. Very nice bass, I like it a lot, active. And this is the DI signal, nothing special. Now I go ahead and level the bass with the drums for the first time. They merge together nicely. You don't need to be 100% accurate here. If you think like, oh, the bass is way too loud, yeah, calm down, dude. This is just a raw volume adjustment, just that the mix gets going. You can listen to it without being like, okay, the snare smacks my brain and everything is too quiet. You wanna go about this like that. Now, guitar, like I said, the DI signal of the guitars are kind of useless, so I have to apply noise gates, a distortion pedal. I use the Angle Powerball from IK Multimedia in this case for amp purposes. I use an, I don't know, it's a 3 Sigma Audio Angle cabinet impulse response and some noise reduction here, or noise subtraction actually. That does not impact the sound. So let's listen to the guitars real quick. Let's find a place where I'm not strumming. Okay, so basic guitar tone, already nice. This is probably a tone that you would get if you recorded a real cabinet with an SM57, for example. That's pretty similar. So this is where I start. Now, I don't care about the synth right now. What I want to do next is I want to find a balance between bass, drums, and guitars like they are right now. The guitars have a lot of low end going on. I don't care about that right now. I just want, like with bass and drums before, I want to establish that raw volume adjustment, that raw volume balance, okay? So let's go ahead and do that. There's the weird mono guitar that sounds a little bit weird and bended solo. So let's check the chorus again. Okay, so that is my starting point. We created kind of a volume balance. You can listen to it. It's not really loud. If I adjust the master fader to 0 dB, then it sounds like this. Really quiet, actually. So, it's good. What's the next step? What do? I apply top-down mixing. That is very important to know. There is top-down mixing and there's bottom-up mixing. What does that mean? I know that normally the beginners who just start with audio production usually use bottom-up mixing. What does that mean? You start by applying plugins on your single tracks. You start treating your guitar, your left guitar, then your right guitar, then your guitar bus. Maybe you apply a room, and then you do some EQing on the guitar bus, and you work your way up to the master track, okay? And the latest thing you usually do is applying a brick wall limiter, so your mix doesn't clip, right? That's the latest mastering stage, I would call it. And top-down mixing is the exact opposite. So you start applying plugins on the master channel. Take this mix and start mixing it from top to bottom. That sounds quite interesting for most beginners, but is actually top-down mixing is actually the workflow that I would say 90% of all metal mixing engineers use. They don't do bottom-up mixing. I've never seen that actually. So I'm gonna apply top-down mixing, but not for long. My workflow is a little bit weird in that regard. I apply top-down mixing first, and then I work against that from the bottom up. So my mix meets in the middle somewhere, so to say. Okay, what do I do and why want I do that? I want to apply the mastering limiter first and raise the volume of the whole song. Whoa! Crazy that dude is. Okay, why do I want to do that? First, let's do it. I'm using a stealth limiter from IK Multimedia, one of the best limiters out there. And I want to raise the volume of my mix, of this raw mix that you heard a couple minutes ago. I want to raise that mix to a volume level of a finally polished rendered song. So, okay, let's fire up the Fakesmore Revolution, fakesmorerevolution.com/music, fire up Fall of the Rider. I take my own songs because I don't want to run into copyright problems on this video. So let's listen to how a mastered song sounds like. You can take your own songs, you can take whatever song you like, one of your favorite bands. You need a song where okay, I want to have the volume of that song. That is my goal, where I want to be level-wise, loudness war. Yeah. So here it is. Good. Let's raise it up, boys. We're not even limiting. Oh, a little bit. 1.8 dB. Check again. I know my mix sounds terrible at the moment, but the loudness is already nearly equal. This is not a final thing here. We can adjust that later. Sure, I know I ended up on 10.5 dB. I know that because I mixed the song already. But this is something, you raise it to a level where the perceived loudness is the same volume, okay? So this is the first step that I do. Why am I doing this? Mixing into a limiter is very advantageous. Because have you ever had that problem? You had a mix ready and then you had to make it loud. Mastering stage, you want to raise the volume of the whole mix. And your mix is pretty darn good. Snare cracks, kick is present in your face, guitars are going, everything's fine. And then you apply that limiter, you raise up the volume, have gain reduction of like 3 to 4 dB, and suddenly your snare is gone, your kick is gone, and everything's sounding terrible. Because the limiter eats up all your transients. Because that's basically what a limiter does. It eats transients. Why? Because a limiter has somehow to cut off all your transients, all your high energy peaks. And usually high energy peaks are kick and snare. There you go. You have a problem. Now you have to go back to the mixing stage and fix that problem or make your track quieter. So, and in order to work around that problem, I say, okay, if I know I will have that problem in the end of my mixing workflow, why not solving all that on the way? That is my thought behind that. That is why, okay, hey, let's apply the limiter first and mix into that. And if that works in the end, if I adjust my snare and kicks so that it works with the limiter, that's great. Isn't it? So, okay, we've done that. Loudness, check. Limiter, check. Good. What's next? Now, I want to apply some plugins on the instrument's bus. Usually, what I'm aiming for is I want to polish my mix as soon as possible. What do I mean by that? Usually, if you listen to that, usually what you encounter in a metal recording is it sounds dull and boxy. These are two things that are very common, in my opinion. So, why not fixing frequencies that you know need to be fixed in the beginning of your mixing stage on top level, top-down mixing again. So if we listen to Fall of the Rider again, and we listen to my mix here, where is the crisp high end? Where are the crisp cymbals, the nice, the expensive frequencies? Well, they're not there. So let's fix that. That's the first thing I want to do. I want to make my mix sound like the other mix as soon as possible. That is what you basically achieve with top-down mixing. You start fixing problems very early on. So let's activate the instrument's bus here. And why am I applying EQ and bus compression on instruments? Because I don't want to affect the vocals. Vocals are a total separate thing in the mix. I have instruments and I have vocals, and those two only meet on the master bus. So whenever you apply EQ for your instruments, make sure you don't affect your vocals by it. I just want to affect all my instruments. So I don't want to walk you through that. Quick peek here. Little bit at 84 Hertz, cut at 45 Hertz, and a massive boost plus 5.67 at 7.2 kilohertz. And because I do not like applying very many bands in one equalizer, it gets very distracting at times. If I apply those two bands, like in the first equalizer, the visual representation would not be as convenient for me. Here I see, okay, I have a slight bump at 2.3 kilohertz and I have a high shelf at 7.5. Okay, if I apply those two bands in the first equalizer, it gets kind of weird to read. So that's just the reason why I use two equalizers. Let's disable the bus compressor for a moment. So what did I do there? So that is kind of impacting, right? That is quite a huge change to the sound. We have a shitty mix right now, but we look at the big picture. What is the big picture lacking? High end. Okay, let's add in high end before we do anything else, because we know we need to add it at some point in time. So let's do it now. Recheck with your original song here. Follow the writer. There we are. We already have that pristine high end that we're looking for, without touching anything on the bottom here. We're not touching the guitar, the bass, the drums. We're not doing anything down there. We're on the instrument bus and on the master bus. We applied 3 plugins. Now let's listen to what those 3 plugins did to our song already. This is without. This is with. Nice. We have loudness. We have our kick and snare problem that will occur in the future solved. And we have pristine high end added to the song. It sounds way more expensive right now. Okay. Next thing is, I want to make the mix a little bit more balanced, compressed. I wanna keep the dynamics. I want to get the dynamics under control, because the drums and the guitars and the bass, they're all over the place dynamic wise, especially the bass, because if you hit bass strings hard, you have these high energy peaks and it fights with everything else in the mix. On the drum side, we have a problem with the snare, the loud hitting. It's all over the place. So in order to fight that, I want to introduce the most important plugin of the whole freaking mix. This is an SSL Bus Compressor. And seriously, if this mix is done and I disable this plugin, the whole mix will fall apart like there's no tomorrow. It's amazing what this plugin does. You don't necessarily need the IK Multimedia Bus Compressor. You just need an SSL Bus Compressor, because I don't know any metal mixing engineer that doesn't use an SSL Bus Compressor on his instrument bus. Actually, I've never seen someone not doing it. And now, setup-wise, you have to trust me here, because I trust Nolly from Periphery. Nolly from Periphery said, okay, he has his bus compression settings from someone else. I don't remember who that was. I watched Nolly's Nail the Mix session where he mixed a song of the album Periphery 3. I think it was Prayer Position. Right, that was the song. And he said, okay, I always throw the SSL Bus Compressor on my instruments to get the dynamics under control. And I always use these settings. Ratio 4:1, attack 0.3 of a millisecond, 300 nanoseconds. Release 0.1 of a second, 100 milliseconds. Sidechain high pass with 150 hertz. So the compressor does not take into account frequencies below 150 hertz. That decreases the pumping effect. So if the kick or the bass hits a very energetic note, or is played very hard, the compressor doesn't react that massively to it. So sidechain high pass, 150 hertz. Now, threshold is an extremely important thing here. And this is where I trusted Nolly, and Nolly trusted his dude who told him, and Nolly was right. Or the other dude was right, however you wanna look at it. So here's what Nolly said. Get your dynamics under control with the bus compressor on your instrument bus. And make sure that the loudest thing in your mix, which is usually the snare in a metal mix, hits 4 dB of gain reduction. That is, I don't know why, but trust me, it ends up sounding the best this way. If we go ahead later when the mix is done and we adjust the threshold and we go for like 6 dB reduction, it's too much. And if we go for like 3 or 2, it's too little. So that 4 dB, it's true. I don't like rules in audio engineering. There are no rules because there are a million ways to do something. But this is, just trust me, 4 dB gain reduction. So you grab threshold here. So the average hovers around 4 dB of gain reduction, right? Cool. The second thing that is very important, the makeup gain. Adjust the makeup gain so that the perceived loudness of the song or of the mix is the same when you enable or disable, or if you bypass the compression or have it in the chain. You can already hear what that does to the mix. Focus on the snare. Focus on the snare. Have it bypassed, and I'm gonna punch it in. So you already get that snare smack. That is very interesting because that is something usually you try to achieve on the snare track, right? You try to compress your snare and you get that smack out of it without killing your ghost notes and all that, all the bleed stuff. And this bus compressor here already works towards that goal. You have this smacking snare, and everything is more controlled, right? The snare is not all over the place, and everything is dynamically more controlled. Okay, so let's compare that. Instrument bus here. I'm gonna let the limiter enabled. Let's compare with and without those three plugins. Okay, we applied 4 plugins on the entire mix. Keeping the guitar amp simulations out of the way, sure, but everything that is relevant for mixing is 4 damn plugins: a limiter, 2 EQs, and a SSL Bus Compressor. That is everything I need to make this kind of a difference. And that is, in my opinion, the greatest thing about top-down mixing. You have the feeling that you're advancing in your work very, very quickly. Okay, so now we have that. What next? What's next? Now, if you work strictly after top-down mixing, you would proceed to like the drum bus or the bass bus or the guitar bus. And that is where I do my own thing. Now I did top-down mixing so far, and now I start the bottom-up mixing. All right? And the most important thing about my mixes is, or about my thought behind that, I built my mixes around the snare, because the snare is the loudest part in my mixes usually. And I take the snare, imagine a skyline of a city, and my snare is the highest building of that skyline. It's the tallest building. I don't want to make 9/11 references right here. The tallest building of the city, and everything else I built around that tallest skyscraper in the city. So everything else is a not so high skyscraper. And that said, I'm gonna start mixing the snare, because it will be the fundamental of my song, of my mix. So I'm gonna mute the guitar, mute the bass, mute the synth, and I'm gonna I'm gonna solo the snare here. So mixing the snare, I don't want to show you that in detail. Like I said, this is not about mixing the stuff, but showing you my workflow. So what I do is I have a snare top and bottom combined in the snare bus right here. I apply a little bit of brick wall limiting because unfortunately, if you take the samples of Superior Drummer at 0 dB fader level, they clip a little bit. They clip like 1.1 dB or something. So I always apply a little bit of brick wall limiter to work against that, and just so that my tracks don't clip. And then I'm gonna go ahead and on the snare apply EQ, push the fundamentals of the snare at 250 Hertz. This is independent. This is dependent on the snare model, where the fundamental, the bass or the low mid fundamental of the snare is. Push that frequency, and usually you want to have that attack at around 4K. So let's listen to that. If I put those things on and off, gonna make a loop here. So apply EQ. That's not that big of a deal. Compression. Very important. And I compress the shit out of the snare. And here's another thing. Yes, I kind of cheated here because I put all the bleed out of my snare in Superior Drummer. Or evil me. But I wanna have the advantages of using an eDrum kit. So if you have a bleed problem here with the snare, don't fight it. Deal with it. For example, on the latest Nail the Mix session with Meshuggah, Q Madsen, the mixing engineer, did not gate the snare. So on the latest Meshuggah album, the snare is not gated, period, because Thomas Hake plays a lot of ghost notes. And so do I. I like ghost notes. I'm a ghost note player. Holy shit. That's from my funk style. Yeah, I'm a funk drummer also, not only a metal drummer. And I like ghost notes. And basically, if you have a snare drum track where you have a lot of ghost notes going on and you cannot find a gate setting that that ensures that all ghost notes go through and all bleed is gone, and that is usually an unrealistic state, then try it a single time, please. Don't apply a gate on the snare and try to mix it. It's possible. It's possible and it can sound nice. I did that by myself. I have been mixing acoustic drums for over 10 years now. I didn't always use Superior Drummer. I'm a real drummer, or I used to be a real drummer. And I did that and it ended up working pretty nicely. So I strongly encourage you, don't always gate that bleed out of your snare drum. It's it can be a mess and it can be a real pain to deal with. So don't fight it, deal with it. But in my case here, I can compress the shit out of my snare, minus 12 dB, 12 dB gain reduction, pretty hard, but I want to get that smack, sure. That's kind of big difference. And then we're gonna apply the FabFilter Saturn, which is a saturator. And I'm applying a little bit of warm tape saturation. Let's see if we can hear that. Yeah, it gives the snare a little bit more of a body. So, and that is basically my snare mix. But now comes the part where the snare comes alive. And I do that at this stage in the mix. I nearly polish my snare before I move on to anything else. Because like I said, the highest skyscraper in the city has to be polished before everything is built around it. Okay, that is my basic mix of the snare. And now I want to add some parallel compression, room plate, reverb to get that. I like that snare tail, that reverb tail. You know, that the punch in your face. I want to achieve that. And how to achieve that? Usually with some nice treated reverbs and parallel compression. So I'm gonna quickly enable my plugins for parallel compression, room, reverb, and plate. What do I have here? Parallel compression. I found out that the Caucus Reaper Rear Comp is the most amazing parallel drum compression plugin there is. I don't know. It's the free plugin that ships with Reaper. It's amazing. It sounds amazing on parallel compressed drums. You can really crush those drums. So let's listen to it now. Maybe I should solo those. No. I should enable the send. So I'm gonna send my snare to the parallel compression track, to the room reverb, and to the plate. As you can see, minus 10 room, minus 11.1 plate. I'm applying a little bit more room than played. But this is usually how I adjust the reverb levels via my sends. I don't pull that fader down like 10 dB or something like that on the room reverb channel. I actually adjust my volumes on the sends. So here's what it sounds like now. Oh yeah. So what's going on here? First, I'm going to show you the parallel, what that sounds like. That is the parallel comp. Room. And plate. And what I always also do is I'm going to send the reverbs to the parallel compression bus. And the end result is this. Without the sends, cool. Okay. Now that's the snare basically done. Because I build my mix around the snare, usually I end up not changing the snare volume ever again from now on. Because, like I said, I build everything around the snare. So why should I have to adjust the snare volume? The snare does not watch what's happening around it. Everything else has to watch what the snare does. That is the basic approach, how I approach this. So what I'm gonna do next is mix the kick in regards to the snare, or depending on the snare. I want to do that quicker because otherwise this video will last at least 10 days, I guess. But here's the thing. Yeah, I make that excursus right now. There are a couple of dudes telling me like, you talk too much on your videos. You could cut those things down to like 10 minutes, and I'm not a fan of that. This is learning audio production takes time and experience, and if you don't want to invest 2 hours of sitting down, watching, recapping, trying, learning for your own advantage, then I'm sorry. I'm not the guy who tells you like, take that plugin, turn that knob, take that other plugin, turn that knob, and you're good. Because then you don't know why I did that. And I want to make you know why I do some things. That is the most important thing that I want to say here. I want to make you know why, not how. The how is easy. How is a list of plugins you have to add to your channels. But the why, that's the long explanation. And the why is what takes so much time in my videos. You hear me talking a lot? Yes, because I want to explain in detail what I do, and that's the important stuff. So if you want to watch real quick 5-minute how-to tutorials, I'm the wrong guy for you. I'm sorry. So let's go on. Kick. Let's solo the kick. See what it sounds like. Good. Our bass, EQ, comp, saturation. Kick out clips a little bit, I don't care about that right now. And again, like on the snare, I'm gonna apply parallel, compression, and room to it. The DI send is for bass ducking. This DI send is actually going to the bass DI track. And at the very end of the bass track, you see that multi-band compressor. So this is a bass ducking technique. So whenever the kick hits, I'm gonna duck out the bass, the low frequency between 60 and 300 hertz from the bass, so that the kick drum, like if the bass is strumming a lot and I have double kick patterns, I want a kick to be clear, and that is how I achieve that. But I'm gonna talk about that on the bass part then. Good. So I'm gonna apply that room and parallel. I don't like to apply plate reverb to the kick because it's too long. It's not sounding right, but a little bit of room reverb, I like that. I don't want to make the kick ring out, but it gives it more life if you apply a little bit of room to it. Like this. Without. Sounds cool, right? And in combination with the snare, we already have something going on here, right? And it's not much that I did. 1, 2, 3 plugins on the snare, 1, 2, 3, 4 plugins on the kick, and some room. Oh, by the way, the reverbs that I use, the room is CSR bundle from IK Multimedia. I'm an IK Multimedia guy, you see, or you realize that probably. So this is the classic room and classic plate from IK Multimedia. Awesome plugins, awesome reverb plugins. Amazing on kick and snare especially. So good. Now we can make a quick comparison between our original Follow the Rider polished song and the kick and snare we got going on right now. Oh, we already improved, I would say. Okay, kick and snare, ready. Now I like to introduce cymbals, not toms. Toms is something I like to introduce if I'm ready with my cymbals and ambient microphones. So I want to quickly go over that. Cymbals, let's put those in. EQ. Some annoying frequencies. Some more high-end low cut. And comp. Gonna solo this for a second. Because I want to show you what that compressor does right here. Cymbals, there's a lot of everything is playing through the overhead microphones, right? And a little bit through the hi-hat, especially the snare. We hear the kick, the snare, everything. And my goal is always to get as much punch out of the snare as possible in a drum mix. And the cymbal and ambient microphones, or the room microphones, can work towards that in a great way. And you can do so by compressing your overheads quite a bit. So let's listen to that and see how I make the snare more crack in the cymbal, in the overhead track, sorry. So again, you have that smack going on. And then again, cymbals go through parallel compression and a little bit of room and plate reverb. Yes, I apply room and plate reverb on my cymbals. It makes them a little bit smooth. Yeah, that's the right word. It makes them smooth. I really like that word, smooth. Good. Kind of the same applies to the ambient microphones. I'm not gonna show you everything here because it really takes too long, but I want to show you what I do kind of, or what actions follow each other, and that's the important stuff. I mix snare, kick, cymbals, and now the ambience. And I don't want to go through every plugin right now. That would take too long, like I said. So here are the ambience. The ambient microphones give the drum kit that, yeah, that real feel, even on electronic drum kits. So if I go ahead and solo the kick, snare, cymbals, and then I'm gonna punch in the ambient microphones, and you can hear clearly that it gets more alive. That's a little bit sterile. So cool, we already have something going on here. And the last part is toms. I find toms very easy to mix because toms are, you need to EQ toms and that's it, basically. Low cut and EQ toms and you're good to go. I've never encountered any tom recordings, even real recordings. I mean, when I recorded toms with microphones and preamps back then, I never did that much to toms. Toms sound naturally good in my opinion. So just leave them alone, leave them be what they are. So here's some EQing, tom 3, 4, some different EQing per tom. Every tom is an own instrument. Treat it as that. Don't apply the same EQ on every tom. Makes no sense. Oh, huge EQ curve actually on the tom bus here. Kind of boxiness in Superior Drummer. Okay. Okay, apply some high end and a limiter to get rid of the peaks. And also some parallel compression room and plate reverbs. And we're done. Where are toms? Yeah. Sounds pretty nice. Okay, so last thing that I see here is applying a EQ to the drums. This is a minor thing. I thought that the cymbals and the overall drum kit could sound a little bit more pristine. It is a little bit dull in comparison, and I just applied a little bit of boost here at 7K, 6.9K. So this is basically our drum mix. Snare top gets routed to the ambient far for what? Ah, for bleed ducking. Okay, but that is not part of this video. So, and believe me or not, surely not 100%, but I end up with this drum mix, or 95% of this drum mix before I listen to bass or guitar or anything else in the mix. I polish my drums with regards to other bands that I like, or yeah, AB a lot. between bands and my mix again to make the drums sound like I want them to in regards of volume, EQ, dynamics, and for doing so, I don't need my own bass and guitars. I know exactly how I want my drums to sound like. And I am, with this workflow, with the top-down mixing approach and now the bottom-up on the single drum tracks, I am able to create a huge, nice sounding drum kit without ever listening or comparing my drum kit to my bass tone or my guitar. That is a thing I actually do later. So let's do that. Hop over to the bass. Bass is a pretty easy to mix instrument in my opinion. You see a lot of plugins here going on, a lot of EQs. I think I have 9 EQs in a row. There are no rules in audio production, right? Basically what I do on bass, let's quickly get over this. Let's enable all this. Basically what I do is apply gate compression. Then I apply a fab filter saturation where I distort all frequencies above 300 hertz. So some people split the bass into 2 different tracks and they distort the high frequencies and they let the low frequencies clean. Okay? And that is what I'm doing here in fab filter saturation is exactly the same thing. This plugin actually lets me do the splitting within the plugin, so I don't need an extra track, which is kind of awesome. So I'm distorting only the top end, everything above 300 hertz here, with a heavy distortion type of saturation. Let's listen to that, what that does. I'm gonna disable all the rest here, so you can get a grasp of what's going on right here. So this is the, I should also disable this. Good. I'm gonna mute the room. This is only the DI with gate and compressor applied. Maybe I should. And now the saturation. So this is the distortion of the high end here on the bass. Cool stuff. So then I'm gonna add cabinet and apply massive EQs, some multiband compression, and finally we end up with this. Which sounds more like a metal bass. Good. What I like is when the bass has some room to it. It sounds a little bit dry in my opinion right now. It's already nice, but I like when it has a little bit of this bathroom type of sound in it. So what I do is I'm gonna send my bass DI track here over to the room reverb and apply that classic room again from IK Multimedia, and I'm gonna low cut that reverb tone, only the reverb. I'm not low cutting my bass DI tone here. I'm low cutting the reverb. I'm EQing the reverb, only the reverb. And this reverb sounds like this. And if I add that to the bass, I'm gonna start dry and add in the room reverb so you can hear the difference. It makes the bass feel more alive. It gives it a little bit of width and space. So last thing I want to do is, and that is again very, very, very important. Usually the bass, you can compress the shit out of the bass, but on a bass bus, if you add room reverb and all that jazz, the bass usually stays a little bit too dynamic on the bass bus. And what you want to do, especially on a metal mix, you want to lock the bass into place so that the volume level of the bass doesn't move a thing. And how do you achieve that? Well, brick wall limiter. In this case, brick wall limiter of IK Multimedia, because I'm an IK Multimedia guy, right? And look at the fader, look at the volume of the bass bus right here. If I play that back, it's not too much, but it still jumps a little bit around. And this can be counterproductive because the bass is such an high energy instrument. And if a high energy instrument jumps around like 1 or 2 dBs, that can have a massive impact on your compression on your instrument bus or on the limiter of your mastering channel. So you don't want to let that occur. And what I'm doing with that brick wall limiter is I'm gonna I'm gonna put a ceiling on that volume level so it always stays the same. I'm gonna do that with a clean style brick wall limiter, so no saturation, no distortion added right here. Very fast attack, very fast release, 0.05 milliseconds and 10 milliseconds of release. This is quite fast, so nothing gets through there, right? And now look again how the volume meter looks like. It's really locked into place, period. The brick wall limiter is doing its job right. And that's how I want it to be in a metal song. Some people might disagree. Some people like bass dynamics. I'm not saying this is the way you have to do it. This is only the way I do it, okay? Just want to make that clear. I'm not establishing rules here. Like I said, I don't like rules because there are a million ways to do something. But I do it like this way. Good, let's listen to bass and drums combined. Nice. This clipping here pisses me off. Get a brick wall limiter over here. This is already a nice mix, I would say. And if I compare that again, let's fire up Follow the Rider. We're doing a pretty good job. And by the way, hey, let's revisit our bus compressor. What does it do? Same thing as before. And now let's disable it. So that thing is really holding the mix together, and it gets more and more important the more instruments we're gonna add. And we're gonna do that because guitars. There's not much to say here about guitars. I do pretty standard EQing, a little bit of multiband compression, a little bit of normal compression. Reverb, like the same on the bass. I like if the guitars have a little bit of space to it. And that's it, basically. So I don't do any magic shenanigans on the guitars. Let me enable all those plugins. This is basic low cutting at 120. Let's solo the rhythm for a moment. Without room. So here's the rhythm guitars without room. Let's grab another part of the song right here, maybe. So these are dry like a fart guitars. Like I said, nothing special. Angle 4x12, amplitude angle, Powerball plugin, a little bit of EQ, filtering out annoying frequencies, boosting the gent frequencies a little bit, but does it gent? And cutting out a lot of 145 hertz because this amp plugin has a problem at that frequency. So that's why this bump is right there. But other than that, not much going on actually. A little bit of saturation, a little bit of quad imaging, not much. And here is the room. Kind of the same thing compared to the bass. So let's take a listen on that. What? No. Rhythm. Without. You hear it especially on the stops, if you have guitar stops in it where the gate comes in, then you hear that small little tail of the reverb that gives the guitar more life, in my opinion. The lead guitar is more like a gimmick in this song. It's a little bit of picking and a little bit of bending, so it's not in tune actually. That is an artistic decision, people call it. Everything that sounds like shit is an artistic decision if you leave it in the mix. Remember that. On the lead channel, it's kind of the same thing. The only difference is that I apply the plate reverb directly on the track. So I didn't make a bus for the reverb like I did on the rhythm guitars. Don't know why. If I did it again, I probably would do it because I like having the room separately and so that I can mute it. So I have to go ahead and mute the plugin. Okay, guitar sounds pretty nice in my opinion. Now let's see how bass and drums work together with the guitars. And if you now encountered a problem with volume, for example, if you enabled the guitars and you were like, okay, now the snare sounds kind of too loud, too quiet, and especially too quiet. Whenever you have the feeling like the snare sounds too quiet, don't ever touch that snare fader, because you're destroying your mixing workflow. You said you build everything around your snare. That's the key feature of your workflow. That's what drives the SSL bus compressor, right? If you mess with the snare, you mess with your overall mix, and that results in inconsistency, right? So whenever you have the feeling you have to boost the snare, consider lowering everything else, please. That is the way to go, because you're building the houses around the snare. You're not making the tallest skyscraper in your city higher just because someone else is too high, right? Bad analogy. That was bad, sorry. But I'm not gonna cut this out. I want to see you I want you to see me fail live. That's kind of what I did there. I'm sorry. I forget it. Don't touch the snare fader, for God's sake. Good. That snare. Next thing in line is synth. Well, there's really nothing to synth. Synth is so easy because synth is MIDI. MIDI is easy because MIDI, well, I have a couple of these guys, Sound 1 from Leonard Digital, and basically what I do is EQ, low cut. 120 hertz low cut, so it doesn't mess with anything. Because Silent 1 sounds amazing, and I mean it. Best synth tool I've ever had. So this is responsible for the intro and the synth line in general. Let's do it real quickly. Some volume automation here and cutoff automation. And verse. And in the end, we got quite some automation going on here. I'm going to show you that really quick because it's interesting. I have this rear EQ here set up, and you can see, I'm going to make those bigger a little bit. You have a little interlude in the song where the synth plays alone and builds up in a certain way. And I have quite some automation here. So we have this rear EQ plugin with a low and a high pass. So what I basically do is I automate those two frequency bands and move them around. And during this period this period is the only period in the whole song where this plugin is enabled. So if I click here, before that part, you see the EQ is disabled. And this track right here is just the automation to enable the EQ. And then I have one automation here for the volume, one for the low frequency, one for the high frequency, and again, one for the bypass. Oh, that here is another EQ, by the way. The bypass is this one. Good. And it results in such a thing. So you can see things moving. I work a lot with that. It's building up here. Now crush it. And disable the EQ again. That's how I work a lot with my synth to kind of give the song that electronic feel. I have to admit I like trance music if it's made well and has nice catchy tunes in it. I really like that. So I kind of build such stuff into my songs at sometimes. I like the really heavy stuff without any melodies and a lot of riffing, but also these kind of things, when you listen to it, you that melody plugs right into your brain and you can't forget about it for 2 weeks. I like this kind of things. So this is how it sounds. Very, very nice. Again, let's recheck what the bus compressor does. And this is one of the oh my god moments. I'm gonna disable it while playing, okay? Let's loop that. Good, here we go. So if you disable it, the whole mix falls apart. The snare is all over the place, the bass wobbles around somewhere, the kick is not present. Everything just falls apart. So this plugin holds the mix together. And what we can try, actually, this is something I said in the beginning of the video. We could try different gain reduction settings. So let's go for that. And you will immediately see that if I go too hard on it, it sounds pumpy and gets crushed too much. It's just that too much feeling. And if I back it down, maybe there are some people that would say, at -2, it sounds better because it's a more open sound. I can understand that, but I personally like if the song is very, very compressed and has, I would call it, has very compact energy. I think that's the right term for it. I don't like that open, boomy sound, but I like it if it's compact, compressed, and aggressive. That's how I see that. So let's try that. And this is when I did that for the first time, and I checked the threshold and was like, okay, Nolly, Mr. Periphery Mixing Engineer, let's see if you're right. And I moved that threshold around and around and around, and finally I had to admit, hey, Nolly, 4 dB gain reduction. Spot on, dude. Respects. Respects are paid. Very well done. And well, that is it for the instruments, actually. This is the chain that I work with. This is how I make my way through my mixes. I start at the master, take a look at the instrument bus, adjust the EQs, the bus compressor, then I start mixing on the snare, kick, cymbals, ambience, toms, the overall drum bus with some EQing, bass, guitar, synth. And now in the end, and like I said, that is very important, the second last step is vocals. Vocals are very, very complicated on my songs. I'm gonna cover, by the way, I'm gonna cover vocal, guitars, and bass on separate videos, because like we are 1.5 hours into the video right now. I don't know. I want to cover those separately. So I'm not going to show you how I mix my vocals right now. That would really, really exceed the purpose of the video. So I'm just going to enable all the plugins here in the vocals, all the sends, and enable this. Now let's find a part.
Why does anyone believe in these made-up stories? These encounters of maniacs. Why does anyone believe the servants of oppression, the servants of the dead? What is business to roll these cues? Grieving about the past. People die, people forget.
Cool. And the very nice thing now is the vocals are in the song, but above it. And so it's, my voice is exactly there where I want it to be. And I'm totally honest with you right now. For the first time in 10 years of mixing, this song was one where I liked my own vocals. I've never liked my own vocals. You probably know, nobody likes his own voice, especially when recorded in a studio. It just sounds like crap. But with this mixing workflow and with this layout, I was actually able to create a vocal mix that I liked. I like my own voice on this song. It's amazing. And this is just due to the fact that for the first time, I separated the instruments and the vocals. And that is something I learned again from Nolly from Periphery. He did that on Periphery 3, and I was like, oh, okay. I always went ahead and compressed my vocals with the instruments. So basically what I did was my vocals were here, and they were running through the bus compressor. So what does that tell us? Everything that's running through the bus compressor affects each other. And yeah, you could say that if you put the vocal bus, or if you let the vocal bus play through the instrument bus and therefore through this bus compressor, the kick and the snare and the bass and the guitars all affect how the vocals will sound in the mix. And you kind of have to balance that. And exactly that was the problem that I had in the past. I never found this right balance between the guitars, bass, drums. The vocals always were too deep into the mix. I could not understand my words. But if I made it louder, it was too loud suddenly. And I had a very great imbalance between high and high volume and low volume parts. And when I pulled this vocal bus out of there and treated it completely separately from the instrument bus, I suddenly realized, oh my God, it is so easy. But I just never knew. This is such bullshit. 10 years of vocal mixing and I'm like, oh God, no. Well, that's learning, that's experience. I hope there's one or the other guy out there that's like, I hope so. Good. We're not done. We're not done. I'm sorry. A couple of minutes more. By the way, if you're hanging in there still, I appreciate that so much, because I like to do these videos. I'm having fun doing them, and I like helping other people. And whoever watches this video entirely, like 1.5 hours or maybe 2 hours in the end of talking about mixing a song, I really, really appreciate that. Honestly, makes me feel great. Thank you. Thank you all. We got 3 plugins on the master channel left. And that is EQ, multiband compression, and a saturator. These plugins were added first at the end of everything. We're at the end of everything right now. These 3 are polishing plugins, I would call them. I do a lot of A/B-ing when my mix is done to see if I need some more treatment. And by A/B-ing, I don't mean like we did before, listening to a song and then hop back into the DAW and listen to the mixed song and out again, listen to another band. I mean, by A/B-ing or by comparing that, I mean listening to the song for 2 days in the car, on a walk in the park, over your headphones, and always between some other bands. So listen to In Flames, then tune in your song, listen to another of your songs, then your new song again, listen to Heart of a Coward, and then to your song, Born of Osiris, and your song, and get that feel of your song. How does your song feel and compare with other bands? Is that what you want? Is there something missing? Is something too much maybe? Does your song has too much high end, for example? Is there some low end that is too much? All these questions. And then you come back into your DAW and you can adjust those things you encountered over a longer period of time. This is nothing I decided in a couple of seconds, like, okay, there's too much bass, let's cut it off. I never do that. Not on the master mix. Master mix takes time for me. So EQ, that is something I do always, like the low cut at 35 Hertz. Some like it at 40, some like it at 50, some like it even at 60. It depends if you mix bass above kick or kick above bass. If you mix kick above bass, you can go ahead with some higher low cuts. But if you mix kick below bass frequency wise, my kick hovers around 55 to 60 Hertz and my bass hovers around 75 to 80 Hertz. Some mixing engineers swap that. For example, death metal is often mixed kick above bass. And then you can get away with that. But I like to have that whoosh in the subwoofer. And that's why I low cut at 35 Hertz. Now, this guy here, high cut at 11.5 kilohertz with a slope of 12 dB per octave. This is something I introduced when listening or while being in this period of listening to other bands. I realized that my song has too much high end, a little bit. There's too much going on in the very top end of the song. It sounds unrealistically present compared to other recordings. So my song really stood out there. I listened to other bands and everything was okay, and then my song was next and I was like, that's too pristine. That sounds too expensive. So let's make it cheap again. I'm gonna show you what that band does right here. So I'm gonna disable it.
Why does anyone believe in these made-up stories?
So this has quite a massive impact, but it was necessary. If I listen to that song nowadays and I compare it to other bands, I don't have that feel anymore that there's something wrong with the high end. That's why I did that. So this is something I do not do always. This is dependent on how the mix really turns out. Good. Next thing, multiband compression. This is not actually multiband compression. This is more like EQing. I cut the frequency range into 4 parts, 0 to 110 Hertz. So I want to grab the ultra low end. Then I have my low mids up to 1.2K. And my high mids from 1.2 to 9K. And the rest, the presence, the pristine high end of the song. And I use this multiband compressor more like an equalizer by adjusting what range should be more present in the song. So this is just basic adjustment between the 4 frequency ranges right here. And it does not do very much. We have a maximum gain reduction of, I think, -1 to -1.5 dB. So I'm gonna deactivate that.
Why does anyone believe in these made-up stories? These ego trips of maniacs. Why does anyone believe the servants of oppression, the servants of the dead?
So basically it evens out everything. It evens out the frequency range. It's like, okay, you mixed for 2 days, all the floor is dirty, you dropped your pizza, you dropped your chips, you spilled gin tonic all over your floor, and now you go ahead and take the vacuum cleaner and clean it all up. So you take the vacuum cleaner and you clean up your frequency range. Everything that's laying around here and there's dirty, here is dirty. You take your vacuum cleaner and you go and clean up your frequency range. That is basically what I do here. That's the best analogy. Just cleaning it. Does not have that massive impact on the sound, but it sounds cleaner. It just sounds cleaner, more polished. That's what I want to say. Last thing, saturator. Saturator X, to be exact. I like this thing. There's not much to it. A basic saturator, awesome sounding. The master plus 6 dB setting, always on everything I mix. I bought this. I bought, loved, and stayed with it. I don't know how much drive there is. Not so much, so I'm not reaching the red parts here, but just enough. You can fiddle around with the gain and find a reasonable setting. I think that's very dependent on taste. So let's just compare that.
Why does anyone believe in these made-up stories? These ego trips of maniacs. Why does anyone believe the servants of oppression, the servants of the dead?
Quite a fatness boost right there. I love this plugin. I could throw this thing on everything. I don't know. Good. We're done. We have a mix. And here comes the best part. I'm going to show you what the master bus and the instrument bus does to my mix now. And we're talking about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 plugins. And how these 7 plugins are holding our mix together. Well, let's not take into account the saturator, the multiband compressor, and the EQ, because they're just subtle changes I did. Let's talk about the limiter and the instrument bus. Here we go.
Why does anyone believe in these made-up stories? These ego trips of maniacs. Why does anyone believe in the servants of oppression? The servant.
Only the instrument bus.
Why does anyone believe in these made-up stories? These ego trips of maniacs. Why does anyone believe the servants of oppression? The servants of the...
So you see how the top-down mixing approach impacts your mix in the end. We applied 2 little equalizer plugins at the very beginning of the mix, and the SSL Bus Compressor, obviously, and those 3 plugins hold and drive all your mix. If you take them away, a mix is not there anymore, and it sounds like shit. That is usually what happens when you start top-down mixing, and you apply general adjustments to all to the entire mix, right? Good. I think we're done. My recording timer says 1 hour and 42 minutes. Holy mother. Beep. Good. I thank you so much for watching. If you're still there, and if you're not dead lying on your keyboard with your head and an empty vodka bottle or something like that, I really appreciate you watching that video, and I hope it helped, or it will help in the future. I hope it was useful for you. I hope you learned something from it. Let me know in the comments, please. Let me know what you liked about this video. And don't tell me I talk too much, please. Tell me what you didn't like about the video. That's even more important. But if so, do it in a human manner. I have lately a lot of trolls in the comment section on YouTube. I don't like that. I don't like being trolled. I could ignore them, but kind of so bad. I want to keep my comment section clean. That is all I want to say. Please be nice. I'm always open for discussion. I love discussing things. So if you encounter something in my mix where you're like, that's cool, but go try that because this. I love this. Please, if you have something you want to add to this, let me know. I'm always interested in a nice and human non-troll discussion. With these words, thanks again for watching, and see you next time.